finally back with another editing breakdown, and today on the docket we have Jordan Spieth at the BMW Championship. So looking at this raw file over here, we can first tell that it's very wide, so we don't get a lot of context because it might be too far away from the subject, but we do have good capture of him, grass, and ball with the divot. We got fans in the background, so we want to take advantage of that. We want to draw him out. Right now, his divot and ball kind of blend in the background, so you can't really see them. We got to take advantage of that. And currently, the brightest part of our image is this fairway in the background, which we don't want distracting from Jordan Spieth and taking away focus. So we're going to have to make sure to take that into account when editing. So the first thing we're going to do here is actually to get rid of most of that bright stuff in the background and just kind of bring this in a little bit tighter. And make sure we give enough space on the right so we know that he's hitting the ball to the right. So the next step here is to just make sure our lines are straight and horizon line is flat, which is so far so good. And the next thing, and one of the most common things I find in golf, but it can also be in landscape photography when you have a lot of greens, is your camera can easily misshoot white balance because of all the green and its dominant color. So we can try a couple of times with this eye picker to see if we get anything we like. I don't think it's doing a great job, but it is telling me that we do have a little too much magenta and we're a little cold on our image. You can just see that also by looking in it. So we're just gonna warm this image up a little bit and then take out some of this magenta. So we're going to start by just introducing a little bit of contrast. I like to add contrast into most, if not all, of my images, unless I'm going for that kind of soft paintish look where we want it to look more like an old school painting. Most of the times I don't want that, so I'm going to add contrast in. And I'm going to go for a little bit more darker, moody image. So we're just going to take the shadows, highlights, and a couple of the blacks down. Add some clarity and texture into this, and then we'll play a little bit with this curve. We'll bring the brightest highlights up, but then most of this darkness down, and then just fine tune that. And as you can see right now, it's very contrasty and very green. So we're gonna first solve that by just taking out a little bit of these greens, and we could do that by first changing the saturation down, but then also just changing this hue a little bit to more yellow orange-ish look. And then now we're just going to go through the colors. One of the most efficient tools that I'm starting to use now after this new update is this point color in the color mixer tab. It allows me to just fine tune exact colors without having to go through the whole color and make those changes on my own. That it gets a certain color I want and I can change it right then and there. And then these blues, we're just gonna take down the saturation a little bit. Alright, now that we got the base, we need to adjust mask to bring this image to life. So the first thing is the subject mask. Of course, it didn't do a great time this way, so we're going to start with a radial mask instead, right over Jordan Spieth. So once we have that set up, we're just going to increase his exposure a little bit. We'll increase the feather up to 75 so we get that much more natural look. And then we'll just bring the shadows up, but making sure he doesn't get too bright in the process. And then of course we'll just add a little bit more sharpness because he's the center of attention. Alright, so now we can duplicate and invert that mask to tackle the background of what's happening. And this one we're just going to make a little bit bigger so we know it's not getting any of him. Now we're just going to drag the exposure highlights down just a little bit. Now of course we did the shadows earlier, so we don't have to do that again now. Our next step is going to be having to deal with this bright surface in the background. So the way we're going to tackle that is just a linear gradient right over all of it, and just bring this highlights, shadows, and exposure down a bit so it looks like it's more in those trees and getting covered up by the shade there. And you can see just in our previous step, if I turn that off and on, you can see the big difference in where attention is now focused, and it is coming more to Jordan Spieth. Then next thing, we're still getting this ball and divot lost in the mix, so we're just going to take the brush tool here and make these pop a little bit more. Can then bring the viewer's attention to where we want in this image, and we're just going to add this to golf ball 2 without the brush, with the brush, and you can see it brings a little bit more brightness to this. I think it could even use just a slight bit more brightness and contrast to it, and we can just make it pop more by bringing out the blacks. The deeper the blacks, the more crisp the edges will be. So now we're pretty close. The only thing that's bugging me a little bit is these bright harsh lighting on the fans in the back, and of course we can't do a whole ton about that, but we just do a little bit. We'll add just a soft radial gradient on it and just bring the whites down and the highlights down a little bit. That way it's not as noticeable, and then we'll just subtract, of course, a divot and ball from that equation so they stand out even more. So that's the before and after, from just a kind of flat looking image to one that pops. And now I'm looking back at it, we might have a little too much orange in it, so we'll just take out some of that orange and bring Jordan Spieth shadows up just a little bit, and that gives us the final image from a flat one to one where you can clearly see Jordan Spieth and his divot and ball up here. You can see the background cloud. We don't have the annoying light distracting the viewer from the image. It is a messy photo because of all the fans here, and it's on the golf course, but the action and the ball and the divot, it's just a fantastic image, and we were able to add some punch and contrast to make it stand out from its original flat look.